With the rebirth of the Pac 12 getting 4 new members from the Mountain West, a ton of people have been talking about the exciting new future for the new look Pac 12. Where are they going to fit in? Are they going to have a shot at becoming a power conference? Or are they going to just be a high tier group of 5 conference? Who will their next additions be? Will they come from the American? Will they also come from the Mountain West? Can Cal and Stanford get out of the ACC? Stuff like that is being discussed right now. But the one conference that has now flown under the radar and nobody's talking about is the Mountain West, the conference that has suffered the most as a result of this, a conference with a very uncertain future. So today we're going to talk about that conference, show them a little bit of love, talk about some of the possible avenues and the future that the Mountain West may or may not have. With the Mountain West losing Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State, they've effectively lost their flagship programs. The Broncos were the absolute symbol of the Group of 5 in football. They were the first Group of 5 team that was getting giant wins on the big stage in these New Year's Six Bowls or BCS Bowls back when they were. San Diego State is a program that has excelled in all sports and has been one of the top candidates for promotion for a while, not just athletically speaking, but academically speaking. Fresno State would argue they have had a better football success over the last 10 or so years than Boise State has, and then Colorado State, probably the weakest of the squad, but definitely no joke either, a program that has been ready for a while and been eager for an opportunity. They've had all-around sports success as well. So it's clearly been the flagship programs that were keeping the Mountain West propped up as one of the stronger, if not the strongest, Group of 5 conference. And they're left with these 8 schools. And what happens to these leftover schools is the critical question that these fan bases are asking, and anyone that's a fan of the Mountain West is likely asking as well. Well, it's bad news for Mountain West fans. The bleeding has not stopped. UNLV and Air Force are the 2 teams that I think are most likely to leave next and almost assuredly will leave the Mountain West. Air Force has already pretty much been said to be headed to the American Conference. It just makes a ton of sense. Army and Navy are already there, and the American Conference has shown interest in adding Air Force. And they're a conference that has always prided themselves on being across multiple time zones, and getting a team from Colorado is going to be something they're definitely going to be open to be doing. And then for UNLV, they would be in the Pac-12 right now if it weren't for state laws and Nevada state laws that tie them to the University of Nevada, and Nevada trying to parlay that into a Pac-12 invite, but the Pac-12 does not want Nevada. They only want UNLV. They don't want to water things down too much. So UNLV basically just trying to get past some state legislature to get that Pac-12 invite. I think they will. This is something that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State went through, Oregon and Oregon State went through, and each time the state law ended up falling, and this program, better program, ended up leaving to a better conference. So I think UNLV will end up in the Pac-12 at the end of the day, and not Nevada. So faced with the reality of 2 more of their best programs leaving, that leaves 6 schools in the Mountain West for the future. So they have a couple options here. Option 1, rebuild what's left in the Mountain West. Now that means you just take the 6 schools and you have a couple options. The first of which, look to the FCS level. Look to a conference like the Big Sky that is geographically right where you are. Look for programs that are ready for promotion, like Idaho. They've already been in the FBS in the past. Who's to say they're not open and willing to come back to a weakened Mountain West? Maybe Sacramento State feels like they're ready. They've had a lot of recent success. Eastern Washington is a historically great FCS program that it no doubt would like to join, and they've already had a colored turf team before. Having a red turf team would be nothing crazy or new for the Mountain West. And the Montana schools. Montana and the state of Montana hasn't been in FBS football for a very long time, so adding them could be a nice, pleasant option for the Mountain West to tap into a market that no one's really touching. Yes, it is Montana, but it's better than nothing. The only FBS conference that I think the Mountain West is capable of poaching from would be the Conference USA. It's one that has been widely regarded as the worst conference in the FBS, and even if the programs left in the Mountain West aren't necessarily better than those CUSA programs, it's still a precedent that we've seen that if a conference had a pre-existing better reputation, they're going to have the leverage when it comes to conference realignment. So from the Conference USA, some teams that could make a lot of sense are New Mexico State and Louisiana Tech, old WAC schools that would be familiar with a lot of these opponents. You already have New Mexico in this conference, and then a couple of maybe Texas schools like UTEP and Sam Houston could also make a ton of sense for the Mountain West. It's just a matter of whether or not these schools would be willing to leave the Conference USA to make that happen, and whether or not they would see that as worth it. And then there's the final option that they could consider, which is the option of going after some of those Dakota schools. Now, some could argue that this isn't really an option, these schools in the Missouri Valley, because geographically, it does not make as much sense as it initially appears to. Some people say, oh, the Dakota schools, they're ready for it. North Dakota State, South Dakota State, they'll be great. These schools have been pretty stubborn about leaving for a while, and I have a feeling they just wouldn't leave unless it was the right circumstances, and it really feels like this is not the right circumstance, which is hopping into a potentially crumbling conference to play Mountain West teams. I don't think that's what any of these schools would have in mind. But what happens if the CUSA stands tall and says, we're not giving up anyone to you? None of those programs want to leave. The Missouri Valley and the Dakota schools aren't interested, and the Big Sky just isn't giving them much to work with. This leads to option 2, which is rumored to be the most likely option, which is the remaining teams scattering to the winds. This would be Wyoming, San Jose State, Utah State, and New Mexico, likely being gobbled up by the CUSA, who would certainly have interest in doing this. They're currently slowly adding teams from the FCS level. These programs would be better than a lot of those FCS prospects they're looking at. And then there's a conference like the American. If the American gets weakened a little bit by the Pac-12, a few teams are poached from there, they would love to take on these teams from the Mountain West, most likely. Nevada being a little bit of a wild card there. They've still got their eyes set on the Pac-12 and trying every ounce of resources they have to get into the Pac-12 with UNLV, but I don't think that's very likely because the Pac-12 is not wanting to water itself down too much, but it's still a possibility. But if not, Nevada would certainly be accepted by the CUSA or American because they're probably perceived as a more valuable program than Wyoming or San Jose State or New Mexico, probably on the same level as Utah State would be the consensus that I think I have seen. You got to remember there's a lot of non-football related things that factor into this. And then that leaves Hawaii, who's poor Hawaii. It's a program that's been subsidized by the Mountain West for so long, and the Rainbow Warriors, traditionally an independent team, could go back to being independent. They could also go maybe have a route where the Conference USA sees it as a worthy investment to add on Hawaii. It makes sense with some of those old WAC rivals they have in there. Maybe they're able to work something out, but Hawaii is facing some seriously daunting potential futures, including being relegated to like the Big Sky Conference, where they have to play some of those teams that they already play in other sports like baseball and basketball, like UC Davis and Cal Poly, or they could be facing potentially their football program being entirely disbanded. They don't currently have a stadium. They play in a high school stadium that has had a few more seats added, basically. So Hawaii football facing a very uncertain future in this scenario. Option 3 for the Mountain West is to just wait and see. There are 6 teams here in the Mountain West if Air Force and UNLV leave, which in all likelihood they will. And the Mountain West has the option to wait and see, kind of like the Pac-2 has done over the past couple of seasons. If in 2026 all those schools leave and they're under 8, guess what? The Mountain West is going to be in a position where they can wait for 2 years to see what happens, kind of like what the Pac-2 did. They waited to see what would happen and then made some moves accordingly. They're still probably going to be waiting on seeing what happens in the ACC to see what their next move will be. And the Mountain West has the luxury of waiting essentially until 2028 to make their move. Now, they'll have to make their move a little bit before then to secure it by that year to make sure the conference isn't entirely not recognized by the NCAA anymore. But this is a viable option for the Mountain West because there's a lot of things that are changing in realignment, and they're just 1 or 2 things moving away from something making a lot of sense and them being allowed to make a move that's in all of their best interests. So those are the possible routes for the Mountain West. Let me know down in the comments if you're a Mountain West fan. How do you feel right now? Do you feel excited about the future of the conference? Are you nervous? All that good stuff. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. I know it's during the season. Some of you guys just want to talk about college football between the white lines. Realignment can get boring. But I also know, as a guy that is an Oregon State fan, it can get a little eerie when this realignment stuff happening in the future seems uncertain. So sometimes it can be therapeutic to hear people talk about the possible futures and the possible outcomes, just sort of knowing what's our best case scenario, what's our worst case scenario, what's most likely going to happen. But if you enjoyed the video, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys later this week.